Hi, this is John DeSouza at the Empowered Light Expo. The presentation you're about to watch is Para-Investigators and the Globalist Terror, all about the period that we're living through right now and how to learn the skill set, the things that we need to learn in order to know what is happening to us right now, to be able to decipher cases and investigations, things that are going on all around us that are invisible to us because of the system that's been put over them. So this presentation is something that I think you'll enjoy, and I think it's something that will really help you in your everyday life to know what really is going on. Guys, welcome. Welcome everybody to Para-Investigators and the Globalist Terror. This is one that is pretty new stuff, and it's stuff that you'll always remember. Let me see. The basic concept here is history will remember this period as a globalist terror. It is a period where we are not allowed to see what is being done to us. Everything's invisible. Everything is not seen. But let me start with my traditional opening before I do this. Let me get everybody to say for me, freeze, FBI. And here's how you do it. You hold your badge, which we also call credentials. You hold your badge credentials up, and your gun is here, and you hold it up, and you go like this. Freeze, FBI. All right. I have a story about that. Exactly. I have a story about that, as a matter of fact. So let me get you guys to say this on 3. 1, 2, 3. Freeze, FBI. Okay? All right. Let's try it one more time, a little more feeling. 1, 2, 3. Freeze, FBI. All right. Now, let me ask you just from common sense, what do you think happens, and I learned this early in my career, what do you think happens when we run up to people and say that? Do you think that they freeze? What do they think they do? Sorry. They take off like hell. Exactly, and I learned that early in my career too. So it's just not worth it to approach people, even regular people, with that opening. It doesn't work. I learned that hey, it's the more common opening was always, hey, we're from the FBI and we're just here to talk to you about a routine matter. Nothing to get excited about. Very simple, very easy stuff. So bless you. So that was always the easier way to go, and I learned that freeze FBI doesn't really work because when they start running away, and we're not allowed to shoot them, and then, which meant I had to get back into my car, I had to go parallel them as they're running away down the streets and try to figure out where they're running to, and then you drive, and then if I hit them with my car, again, I get in trouble, because it's just easier that way. So. How many years did it take for FBI to figure out a better approach? Well, for me, it took like about 6 months, and I have a story for you about that. I started in the FBI. I started, and I learned that there were better ways of doing things very quickly. But one of the things that was unavoidable is going to a new office, like Arizona, for instance, and having to do work in a new place where customs are different from anything I've ever known before. So I was assigned to Arizona. I was a new person at that office. And we had a supervisor who was like an old Irish guy who fits every stereotype of an old cop that you could ever imagine, okay? And he would call me into his office, and he would always be hiking up his belt all the time, and he would call me kid if we were alone, He would call me, he'd say, hey kid, yeah kid, do this kid, do that kid. And one day, I got my first, big lead. We call them leads to be assigned. And I got my lead that I had to cover. And it was a lead to just basically go serve a subpoena on a potential witness in a big organized crime case that was going on. That's all it was. It was a pretty simple, straightforward thing. So the supervisor calls me in, and he says to me, okay, kid, you know what? As a favor to you, I'm gonna help you myself. I'm gonna cover this lead with you, and we're gonna go out together, all right? So then I'm walking out with him. I'm walking out with him to cover this lead, and anybody here who's like former cops, and even military officers, you know, one of the worst, I saw all the veterans in the bullpen were shaking their heads as I'm walking by. And I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. And they're just shaking their heads as the supervisor's, you know, walking out with me in tow, and we're walking out to go cover the lead. I found out later, when you're in law enforcement, or you're a police officer of any kind, one of the worst things that can happen to you is that a supervisor decides to cover a lead in the field with you in person. Because supervisors don't know anything except being at a desk. They don't know the streets. They don't know anything from the streets. And it's a really bad thing if one of them says to you, I'm gonna go cover that lead with you in person. Because it's a bad thing. So anyway, so we go out, we start driving out to this location. And I find out, I don't know if anybody here is from Arizona, but I find out that where we have to go to is a place we call it the Heart of Darkness. It is the largest trailer park in all of Arizona. It's like a small city where people have their own customs, they're cooking outdoors, it's like there's tweakers out there everywhere, there's people cooking meth out in the open. I mean, it's insane. And it's its own city, kind of, within the city. And because it's so big, it's like acres and acres and miles of territory. And so it was not a good place to not have a lot of guns and a lot of ammo. So we went out there, we end up going right into the heart of darkness, like the center of the town out there. And we go to the address ends up being the most dilapidated trailer you'll ever want to see. And we knock on the door, and I should say the supervisor steps forward and knocks on the door, and he says, and there's this old man. I mean, he wasn't that old. I mean, he looks like one of these prematurely aged people from drinking, and he just kind of a little shriveled up, kind of, but he probably wasn't any more than 40 years old, and he's hunched over. He kind of comes stumbling towards the doorway. And he's just like, his hair is just two tufts of uncrumpled stuff on top of his head. And he's just like all bent over. And he has a wife beater on that has grease stains on it and holes on it. And as he's walking to the door, he's kicking through these empty whiskey bottles all over the floor, everywhere. Like there was a layer of whiskey bottles. And he's just comes forward. And my supervisor stands forward and very proudly goes, FBI, we're here to talk to you. And he's got his credentials, and our credentials are a very nice thing with DOJ and our picture in the front there. And he's holding it forward like that. And the little old drunk dude comes forward, and he just kind of shuffles forward. He says, I don't have my reading glasses. Put that a little closer to me. And he hunches forward, squinting his eyes. And so the supervisor puts it right there in his face. And he goes, and he spits a big old glob right on where his photo is in the credentials. And wait, it gets worse. So my supervisor rears back, just reels back for a second, and just his face goes all twisted. And then he just leans forward and gives a vicious right cross, bam, right on the sweet spot of the guy's face. Sweet spot is a spot between the cheek and the jaw that if you connect just right, it turns a person's lights right off. And he just bowled him flat, and the little old dude was just flat on the ground. He's out. He's out on the ground on his side there, and he's gone. He's just out. So my supervisor kind of hikes up his belt, steps forward, looking a little proud for a moment, looking at what he's done, looking, thinking, and I'm in shock behind him. I don't know which way to run, but I stayed still, and he just kind of leans forward, and then he takes a step back, and he says, "You know, kid, we were never here." Says, "You know, we knocked on the door and nobody answered, okay? Let's amscray." And he just turns around, and we go back to the car, and we drive out of there and drive back. And we were never there. Nothing ever happened. So none of that ever happened. Except he told the story later after he retired. So now I can actually tell the story. And that was one of my introductions to the FBI that kind of told me that things are not, as they appear. Things are slightly off kilter. And as experiences went on, things went even more off kilter from there, just so you know. So, like I said, history will recognize this period as the globalist terror, where things are being done against us all the time, every day, that we're not really allowed to see. Now, there was another period recently where this happened, and it was during the Soviet Union. I have a strong connection to the Soviet Union because when I joined the FBI was right around the time of the fall of the Soviet Union. And they had gone through a very similar period where the news was always, everything's great in the Soviet Union, everything's great. Meanwhile, they were having family members dragged out at 3 a.m. all the time, dragged away and killed and never seen again. And that was very common in the 80s and the late 80s when the Soviet Union finally went down forever. So, high-profile crimes against humanity. That's what this presentation is about. And this is a general intro as well. My name is John DeSouza. I was a special agent in the FBI for over 20 years. At the age of 23, I became one of the youngest people ever recruited into the FBI as a special agent. As an agent, I helped solve high-profile crimes against humanity. Homicides, the '93 World Trade Center attacks, the Oklahoma City bombing, even 9/11. Most of my cases were criminal in nature, but other cases weren't so cut and dry. If I were to tell you I saw or experienced nothing strange during my 20+ years of service, I wouldn't be telling the truth. These cases couldn't be explained in the physical world.
You see that?
This appeared in the Norwegian sky.
Oh my God, get that.
What is this?
Major sighting here.
What I saw, the things I couldn't explain, they haunted me throughout my career. Indigo children of 9/11. After 9/11, all these cases started coming forward. Children drawing pictures of burning buildings before it happened. Others saying they made predictions of 9/11. They were called Indigo children.
There is absolutely no doubt that this is a different kind of child. It's a different kind of human being. They think differently. They are completely different.
I investigated several Indigo children while in the FBI. Could they predict the future? Terror events?
There were a lot of people that had premonitions of the tragedy of 9/11, days, even weeks before the event actually happened. The problem is, what do you do with it?
The FBI concluded the Indigo children's premonitions were just coincidence, so they closed the case. I believe evil exists in the physical world, but from my experience, there's an evil even darker in the paranormal. The Indigo Kids were investigated. They were basically kids from all over the country who had the premonitions, who told adults what was going to happen on 9/11, and they were all investigated by the FBI and police officers that worked with us. They were all reported by caretakers, and we had to interview all of them, and all of them, it was always found they had no connection to terrorism. Their parents had no connection to terrorism, and these were genuine paranormal events that occurred with these kids. And that's why I write about that in all of my books and to tell people about these kids who occurred. Yes, the young lady, shout it out.
Did they specifically say twin towers or just two large buildings?
It was usually, they described, two large buildings. They described skyscrapers. They did artwork. They did artwork like we saw in this video. They did artwork that showed two skyscrapers with people falling out, jumping out, or some of them talked to adults and told them, tomorrow, stay away from tall buildings, because tall buildings fall down, sometimes they fall on people. So what they did was describe the best they could in the language, of an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, what was going to happen.
But time span wise, it wasn't necessarily like days before.
It was, it usually was just days before, like 2 or 3 days before. Some of them were 2 days before, some of them were the day before. Some of them were a week before the event, but it was all close in that time range, always.
Were the parents contacted authorities?
No, never. The parents don't turn in their own kids, usually. Babysitters, caretakers, relatives, aunts and uncles. Some of them were teachers that had them in the public schools, and teachers' assistants that saw them draw these pictures of the Twin Towers burning up and having planes flown in. People like that. And the parents usually objected very much, but it was too late. Parents had to deal with it when that happened. So, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. These kids are probably in their 30s now.
Exactly.
What's going on with them now?
That's a great question. The problem is the FBI didn't allow us to follow up or do anything further with that. As a matter of fact, the system that we use to investigate these kids is called Rapid Start, and it's a closed system. And those leads and the identities of those kids are sealed, basically forever. Yeah, it's called the Rapid Start system, but we call it Rapid Stop because it stops everything.
But some of you guys that are FBI people, you must keep track of these people. Being in the spiritual realm, I'd want to know and keep.
Have they written books? Yeah, have these
adults
written books?
You can search on the internet, and you will find stories where people post themselves.
That's true. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, she said if you go on blogs and so forth, on internet search, you can find these kids actually talk about themselves, and they will tell you their experiences, and it's out there in the blogosphere. You just have to do the right search strings, and you can locate them, and they'll talk.
So tell me, did airplanes really crash into that, or is that all phony?
Why do you ask that question?
Because I went there to look things over, and I have different people I know that are very wealthy people. There's all kinds of stuff on there. Yeah, none of us know what's going on.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I can't repeat everything that he said, but he said, were there really planes that went into these buildings or what? And that was one of the things. All FBI agents who worked on the case of 9/11 worked on it, and even aviation officials. After the buildings were knocked down, the thing that really jumped out at us was that there was, as we were going through the rubble, and you can verify this with anybody in law enforcement who was there at the time, there was not one scintilla of a plane, of these giant airliners in the rubble of either of those two buildings. And I'm saying there was nothing left. There was nothing there. There was not a seat cover, a body of a passenger, a a black box, a piece of an engine, nothing. There was nothing in the rubble.
I think someone said to me the jet fuel and the heat from that was so intense.
So intense that it melted everything, every little crumb.
The skyscrapers as well as the planes.
It melted everything. Yeah, that's the ticket. Yeah, everything was melted. And yet we found a passport of one of the terrorists that was just left there on top of the rubble, the dust of a rubble, and it wasn't even burned. It was brand new, like it just got printed. And yet we found that. And we found items of furniture of the people who worked in the of offices. We found items of furniture all over the place. Yeah, and there were papers too. There were papers everywhere. But the jet fuel melted everything. It melted everything.
Yeah, the story I heard was that they were drones that hit the building and the real flights were diverted to another airport where the passengers were killed.
Well, the story he heard that there were drones that hit the buildings. Yeah, but didn't everybody see the planes? I mean, we all saw and heard. We thought we saw and heard planes that hit the buildings.
I was there. I saw the second plane go in the building.
Did you though? Did you though? I'll say it again. Did you though?
Where would I have not seen it?
That's a good question. Because I saw the same thing, but now, once I went through the rubble of the actual building and we didn't find any piece of any plane, it made myself and all the other FBI agents, we all said, something's not adding up here. Because we thought we saw and we heard planes going into these buildings.
There were holograms.
Well, you know, it was funny because at the time that it happened, there was another guy who saw the planes and heard them all as well. It was a local builder there in New York City, and he did an interview on the radio, and he actually said that, he said the technology that was used to build the World Trade Center was different. It was the steel cages were on the outside of the buildings. So he said, and that guy was Donald Trump. He was there on the scene, and he gave an interview, and it's very hard to find this interview now because Google will get rid of it in the algorithms. It's very hard to find it, but it's out there. And he said, so you're going to tell me as a reporter, he's just talking to the supposed journalist at the time, he says, you're going to tell me that these planes, these giant airliners just went through these buildings like butter when the Twin Towers have the steel cages externally on the outside. That's why the windows are so small, because the Twin Towers had the steel cages externally. And he says, and yet you're going to tell me that these jetliners went right through the Twin Towers like butter, just melted right through them like that. And he stopped short of saying, I don't buy it. He said something like, that doesn't really work for me. Doesn't really add up. And I have a hard time with that. And then that was it. That's all that he said. And it's absolutely true. Under the technology that I know what I thought and I saw and heard also. And a lot of people were there and they saw and heard the same thing. But it doesn't add up to the evidence on the site. It's not consistent.
I saw the detonation on each level, like a detonation thing.
Exactly.
And later it was gone.
Exactly. We saw that too.
But what would the game be to say, like, what is the game?
Get in war. Get us in war.
I think when the cabal does something, there are many levels to it. It's not just one purpose. It's not just get us into war. But yeah, they want to get us into the war, yeah.
The Americans set us up on that.
Patriot Act.
Yeah, and set up the higher security, the TSA, the Patriot Act, all these things. That's what I believe. Because we are living right now under the gaslight triangle, where we have three legs of this triangle: fake news, everybody knows about that; government authority fakery, everybody knows about that after 9/11 especially. But the third leg is establishment science, mainstream science. We have the media is so controlled; it's incredibly controlled. 90% owned by just 6 companies.
But who's controlling it? Who's changing their minds? Who's altering their minds and not presenting just facts?
Mm-hmm.
How are they so brainwashed?
Well, they're getting a
public
salary,
school system.
but they're also getting a salary, and if they don't write the story they're told, they're fired.
So it's fear-based.
Exactly. Absolutely it is.
Establishment science, mainstream science is the leg of this triangle that most people don't know about because we're so trained to obey doctors, to obey scientists. And these are the scientists that in the 50s were promoting cigarette smoke as being good, nicotine as being good for your lungs. There's hundreds of these ads out there if you want to go do a historical search. And today, these same doctors are all promoting big pharma, vaccines for your kids, and lots of other stuff. So in this presentation, I talk about the difference between true investigators and true investigators and fact gatherers. Para-investigators are true investigators that actually use scientific methods, but then they also rely upon intuitive paranormal abilities as well. And when you see these old veteran cops, homicide detectives, they all have these abilities. They have to cover them up, but they have these paranormal abilities, these intuitive abilities, no matter how physical they seem. And that's this material is from my book, The Para-Investigators, supernaturally gifted investigators, and they're much more common. Just practice one time on me before you go. Okay, this is a story real quick. I'll give you a real quick story. This story is taught at police academies and the FBI academy. There was a homicide detective who was actually a pretty young guy. It was out in the Midwest. I think it was like Ohio where this actually happened. He had a young father who had a stepdaughter who had been murdered. Oh, sorry, she was disappeared, sorry. She was disappeared. And so he was interviewing the stepfather, who he had a knowing, he had an intuition that the stepfather had killed the young daughter. And so he interviewed this guy for many hours, just going at him again and again and again. But they couldn't find any evidence at all. They searched her bedroom, they searched the young girl. The young girl was 17 years old, and she was missing. And her mother thought something had happened to her. So this detective just had a feeling that this guy, who was a hardworking laborer guy, he was a responsible family man by all accounts. No violent record, nothing, and never done anything. And he just talked to him more and more. And then he decided to be a para-investigator. He decided to inhabit the guy's spirit, and he said to him, listen, I know your stepdaughter was probably behaving seductively towards you. She was probably trying to use sex to get you to do things. She was probably a tease, and she probably did things wrong against you, didn't she? And he kind of tried to egg him on that way. And he finally got him to say, yeah, some things happened. Some things happened between me and her, and she wouldn't listen, and some things got violent between us. And then he was like, okay, great, because he couldn't place the guy under arrest. This all had to be voluntary. So he's just trying to get more and more out of him. And then the guy suddenly, he stands up and he says, you know what? The subject stands up. He says, you know what? I'm going to confess everything to you. I'm going to tell you everything that happened. But I just need to go see the stepmother. I need to go see my wife one last time, and then I'll come back and I'll tell you everything that happened. And he couldn't stop him because he wasn't under arrest and he didn't have enough probable cause or evidence to place him under arrest. So the detective just got a sick feeling in his stomach, a really sick feeling. And he stood up and he said to the guy, okay, you can go, but I want you to just practice one time on me, as if I'm your wife. What you're gonna say to her, say it to me before you go. That's all I want, just real quick. He said, okay. His shoulders drop. When somebody's about to tell the real truth, their shoulders drop like just a half a milliliter. It's a micro signal that you develop an eye for. And his shoulders drop, and he's like, okay. And then he sits down, and he essentially starts giving the confession of what happened. And now he had enough to place him under arrest, so he couldn't leave. And he found out later that the guy just, that in this front seat of his pickup that was parked outside, he had a shotgun and some new shells he had just bought. He had just bought from the local store there, and that if he had let him go to go see the wife one last time, he was fully intending to kill her and kill himself probably as well. And that if he hadn't done that, if he didn't just say to him, just practice one time on me, please, before you go. That's all you got to do. If he hadn't done that, the case would have been over. And so this case is taught at police academies for guys to use their intuition and go with their intuition. But don't say that you're going with intuition. You can't do that. So
the guy planted the seed of what into the man. I mean, if he was going to kill his wife, it sounds like he was like programming the guy to do it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So it's not the man was going to kill it. The other guy should have been arrested for. People can use mind control and control your thoughts and life.
Like counselors. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I want to get off the subject a little bit in regards to interrogations. I don't know if you're familiar, NBC Nightly News, Lester Holt is running the investigation Justice for All.
I try to avoid it, but...
Okay, but he's talking about to a guy, and when they interrogate somebody for a long period of time, sometimes they'll get, especially if you're younger and naive, they'll force an innocent person to confess to something they didn't do.
that happens all the time. I talk about that. I talk about that too. Yeah, I do.
Anybody?
Also, yeah, that's a very common thing. False confessions, absolutely. For people who are note takers, I go over a lot of the same material. Well, at least the note-taking material I go over in my workshop, and you get a copy of the workshop if you come to my workshop, which is a continuation and a further development of this lesson. True investigators versus fact finders. Fact finders is supposed to be a good thing, like judges and juries are fact finders, but the problem is there's many fact finders that pose as true investigators. Fact finders are not investigators. Fact finders are analysts, scientists, people who gather facts and data. They do data mining, but they cannot give an investigative conclusion. That's something that only true investigators can do. Here's some sayings. Fact finders are researchers, scientists. They're non-investigators, and that can become destructive. Here's some non-investigator favorite sayings. Follow the data. You hear a lot of scientists say that. Follow the data, by which they mean follow only material data to a purely material conclusion. And if that conclusion is outside of the material, you can't follow that. Here's another one. Great claims require great evidence. Well, no, that's not true, because then we could never make any great claims. Thomas Edison claimed he could invent the light bulb based on 9,000 failed attempts. If he hadn't been able to make that claim and move forward with it, the light bulb would never have been invented. Here's another one. Where is your evidence? Where is your evidence? That's a very popular one. By that it means, I want you to do a miracle for me. Show me, force me to believe. And that never works out. True investigators follow clues no matter where they lead, even if they lead across worlds, through time, space, and dimensions. True investigators move forward, they create impossible profiles, and they always offer a final investigative conclusion. Here's what fact finders do. Fact finders, like scientists, disagree with true investigation. They create things like apophenia, which is saying that if you perceive patterns, that you're just making the patterns up in your head. They're not real. Pareidolia, an illusion based on seeing patterns. So the face on Mars, it's not really a face. You're just seeing patterns and making a face in your brain. See, that's what scientists tell us. That's what they want to steer us towards.
What was the point of that? It sounds like both sides are like lying to each other.
Yeah, they are, definitely.
Is that your point?
No, but yes, that's part of my point, because fact finders are so different from true investigators.
True investigators can leave out just as much. Why don't they work as a team? I mean, facts are facts.
I wish they would.
Ideas are ideas.
Yeah.
And there shouldn't be one or the other.
That's true.
They should work, and they do work as a team actually, because every FBI agent has to work with analysts. They have to work with scientists. So they do work as a team all the time, but sometimes they just don't agree on what evidence is.
Well, your opinion, is that face real or not?
Oh yeah, I definitely believe it's real, the face on Mars, because I see it, and I know it's real. I can tell it's real. That's it. Absolutely.
Oh, come on. Don't try to pull it over.
This is good. She doesn't need the mic. She doesn't need me to repeat their comments. DeSouza's rule of reverse corroboration. Whenever investigative conclusions are provided by institutions known for public deception, and we can disagree on what they are, then we know that conclusion is false. We know that conclusion is false. So let me see. Oh, this is a system that was developed in the Soviet Union. I just adapted it and use it. It's called the cuck system of investigative technique. And it's for don't be a cuck for the deep state. First, it's cover story is identified. Each of these steps requires a lot of work though. Cover story identified, use usual suspects actions. C is for collect and connect all clues that are dispositive. And the final is K for knowledge from investigative conclusion. Cuck investigative system can be applied to mass shootings, to bizarre political situations, to government situations that make no sense, and hidden situations that will never see the light of day. It can be applied to any area of life, and it takes some practice also. Here's one case study. Yeah, everybody has strong opinions about this one, and about every case that I put into the cuck system. Jeffrey Epstein is dead in a suicided jail, spurring inquiries. Cover story that we perceive, what is it? Epstein is an evil sex trafficker. It's amazing how every story that went all over the world, and we're talking thousands and thousands of stories, they all make sure to put in all of these facts, Epstein is an evil sex trafficker. Epstein has attempted suicide one time before, okay? So that sets up this event, all right? Also, Epstein now completed his own suicide with no involvement from any of the many evildoers that want him dead, okay? And that's the completion of the cover story. Now, for usual suspects actions, what are they doing? Thousands of mainstream outlets, newspapers, all the exact same cover story. Authorities in New York City and federal government make no attempt to prosecute who? The warden of the MCC, the guy who's in charge. In this case, I think it was a woman. The woman who was in charge of that facility. As a matter of fact, she was just given a transfer, which is like a promotion to a larger facility. And she was transferred to a place where nobody knows where she is, so that nobody can talk to her or interview her.
But does she really live? Maybe she's been kidnapped and done away with.
It's possible, very possible. Because the important thing is that nobody be able to talk to her. That's all they care about. Yeah. Also, commentators and information officers of the globalists are using this period to refrain from commenting on the names of the politicians and the elites that are on the Epstein lists through this death. Suddenly, you don't see any discussion of all the list names that are popping up. And that's for you. Then, here's the hardest step in the cuck system is collect and connect dispositive clues. The word dispositive here means clues that are so strong, have so much evidentiary weight, probative weight, that they can actually determine guilt or innocence by themselves. That's a dispositive clue. because it's so strong and overwhelming. So here's some dispositive clues in this case. The previous attempted suicide appears to have been just theater to set up the plausibility of this later act. Because by all accounts, the previous attempted suicide, it didn't make any sense. Because for one thing, he was left on his own for 8 hours. 8-hour period. Because when you're taking off suicide watch, he's allowed. 8 hours is a lot of time to prepare a suicide. He could if he had really tried to kill himself, he could very easily have killed himself in that 8-hour window.
But they never said how. How did he? Did he take his clothing and hang them from what?
They didn't say.
That's
You're right.
They didn't.
Exactly. You're like my assistant for this thing.
He stabbed himself with a plastic fork.
Really? In his hand.
Is that what they said?
No, he's
A
just.
busted fork?
I'm making fun of it.
No, really? How did they die? I
They didn't report it. They didn't
never
say.
said that.
They
You're alone in
won't.
a cell.
You're on suicide watch.
Yeah.
You have nothing around you that you could potentially
Well,
injure
you could rip
yourself
your
with.
clothes and.
So the whole story is BS.
Exactly.
Of course.
The whole story is.
Well, they were
Also,
I thought they were claiming that when he was found, he had a bed sheet around his head.
Yeah.
Now, that's one of the claims.
yeah.
That's just one of them.
Right.
We don't know where that came from.
That's right.
But it's also a red herring as well, because why would a bed sheet over his head? What's that got to do with killing yourself? You know, like, because it could have been wrapped around his head like a turban. You know, it's just a red herring.
That was broken?
Yeah.
Like he did it to himself?
Also, just prior to this, there were 2 massive blackouts in New York City, very rare event, very rare, and there was not just one, but 2, that affected the portion of New York City where the MCC is situated. The Metropolitan Correctional Center. It is the largest jail facility in New York City, which is really something. Really, that means it's massive. It's massive. And the excellent true investigators on 8chan, if you guys don't know, 8chan, they have a group of investigators that are better than the FBI, much better. And they do photo analysis. They do photo analysis, and they actually took a picture that was released of supposedly Epstein's body, and they did a comparison. And by comparative analysis, they're the same guys who exploded the Obama birth certificate when it came out. And they did analysis, and they showed that it was a composite document that was not a genuine document at all. They also were the ones who exploded the supposed pictures of Osama bin Laden when he was killed by SEAL Team 6, supposedly. Supposedly, exactly. And they showed that it was a fake, that it was a Photoshop. The pictures of Osama bin Laden were not genuine of him. They were actually composites.
And they threw the body into the water.
Right.
So nobody could prove anything otherwise.
Exactly. So this is all investigators on 8chan who did all these things. And they came up with the comparative analysis that said that the body that was shown of Epstein's body, it wasn't him at all. So here's the knowledge, the investigative conclusion that we get at the end of this, using the CUC system. Number 1, Epstein is alive and well. He was probably smuggled out of the MCC by the White Hats and Allied forces during these blackouts. And somebody else was substituted in there for him. Also, he is currently cooperating with authorities towards the prosecution of all of his former associates who are now breathing easy and believing he is dead. Okay? That's right. And I never said this would be easy. I mean, that's the investigative conclusion you get to using the CUC system that we have here.
He might be in a witness protection program. Yeah. And change his ID, everything.
I think it's very likely. Yeah, I think it is very likely. So like I said, for anybody who's note takers, I always get a lot of note takers. I'll be going over a lot of this a similar material at my workshop tomorrow, and you guys can actually you can get a copy.
So that you don't have to take all
What
the
are you saying
notes.
Epstein is still alive? Are you personally saying that?
Yes, I am.
And are you personally saying the Trade Center, there was no plane, that was a hologram?
I'm saying that the proof that's available shows that there couldn't have been a plane in those buildings. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. According to the proof that is available in those buildings.
And I wonder, I saw the one photograph, the one video of supposedly the construction workers at 11 a.m. took the picture of the first tower going down between the building. This construction guy just happened to be taking a video of the first tower that went down. We never saw that after one time on television. Never saw it, just the second one.
Can I make one other insight? If you go on YouTube and look at the planes going into the towers, I believe the second tower, when the plane goes in, the plane literally goes through the building and you still see the nose of the plane going out the other side of the building. That's physically impossible to happen unless someone imposed a video in there and then they control the narrative that you couldn't get to. And that's why I say there was some kind of video hologram put over it to buy you. And then in the Washington, the Pentagon.
But yet we heard it too.
I heard the FBI took all the videos of all the nearby hotels so you could not see what hit the Pentagon.
Think of going to see a magician's act. You know, I feel like I saw the guy remove his own head and put it in a box, and I saw it, I heard it, I sensed it happening, but you find out later it was just a trick. It was a trick.
I was just going to add that the recent Spider-Man film, I know it's a film, but sometimes there's a lot of truth in these things, that is has the elements, the elementals, you know, fire or whatever, and they create these monsters out of them, and the people believe them, but they're completely holographic. And they talk about, so I wonder if there is some technology out there that they used in 9/11 that they create a holographic image or something that is so real with sound, it's like a sense around experience.
Yeah.
Now, people always ask me, how do I find these videos? All any videos that I use in my presentations, they are extremely difficult to find because YouTube takes them down immediately wherever they appear. Okay, and my conclusion from that is that the same people who want this stuff suppressed are the same people who own Google and YouTube and Twitter and all of these social media giants. Because if you try to find this video, I'm about to show you, within minutes, news anchors knew who did it. I'm about to show, this is one of the most suppressed videos in the entire blogosphere. It's incredibly hard to find, and that's because YouTube takes it down anywhere. They ban it, they get rid of it anywhere that it's found.
On the morning of September 11th, 2001, 19 men armed with box cutters, directed by a man on dialysis in a cave fortress halfway around the world using a satellite phone and a laptop, directed the most sophisticated penetration of the most heavily defended airspace in the world, overpowering the passengers and the military combat-trained pilots on 4 commercial aircraft before flying those planes wildly off course for over an hour without being molested by a single fighter interceptor. These 19 hijackers, devout religious fundamentalists who like to drink alcohol, snort cocaine, and live with pink-haired strippers, managed to knock down 3 buildings with 2 planes in New York, while in Washington, a pilot who couldn't handle a single-engine Cessna was able to fly a 757 in an 8,000-foot descending 270-degree corkscrew turn to come exactly level with the ground, hitting the Pentagon in the Budget Analyst Office where DoD staffers were working on the mystery of the $2.3 trillion that Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had announced missing from the Pentagon's coffers in a press conference the day before, on September 10th, 2001. Luckily, the news anchors knew who did it within minutes.
Osama bin Laden.
The pundits knew within hours.
Osama bin Laden.
The administration knew within the day.
Terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
And the evidence literally fell into the FBI's lap.
That a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
But for some reason, a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists demanded an investigation into the greatest attack on American soil in history. That investigation was delayed, underfunded, set up to fail, a conflict of interest, and a cover-up from start to finish. It was based on testimony extracted through torture, the records of which were destroyed. It failed to mention the existence of WTC-7, Able Danger, P-Tech, Sibel Edmonds, OBL and the CIA, and the drills of hijacked aircraft being flown into buildings that were being simulated at the precise same time that those events were actually happening. It was lied to by the Pentagon, the CIA, the Bush administration, and as for Bush and Cheney, well, no one knows what they told it because they testified in secret, off the record, not under oath, and behind closed doors. It didn't bother to look at who funded the attacks because that question is ultimately of little practical significance. Still, the 9/11 Commission did brilliantly answering all of the questions the public had, except most of the victims' family members' questions, and pinned blame on all the people responsible, although no one so much as lost their job, determining the attacks were
failure of imagination.
Because
nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
Except the Pentagon, FEMA, NORAD, and the NRO. The DIA destroyed 2.5 terabytes of data on Able Danger, but that's okay because it probably wasn't important. The SEC destroyed their records on the investigation into the insider trading before the attacks, but that's okay because destroying the records of the largest investigation in SEC history is just part of routine record keeping. NIST has classified the data that they used for their model of WTC-7's collapse, but that's okay because knowing how they made their model of the collapse would jeopardize public safety. The FBI has argued that all material related to their investigation of 9/11 should be kept secret from the public, but that's okay because the FBI probably has nothing to hide. This man never existed, nor is anything he had to say worthy of your attention, and if you say otherwise, you are a paranoid conspiracy theorist and deserve to be shunned by all of humanity. Likewise him, and her. And her, and her, and him. Osama bin Laden lived in a cave fortress in the hills of Afghanistan, but somehow got away. Then he was hiding out in Tora Bora, but somehow got away. Then he lived in Abbottabad for years, taunting the most comprehensive intelligence dragnet employing the most sophisticated technology in the history of the world for a decade, releasing video after video with complete impunity and getting younger and younger as he did so, before finally being found in a daring SEAL team raid which wasn't recorded on video, in which he didn't resist or use his wife as a human shield, and in which these crack special forces operatives panicked and killed this unarmed man, supposedly the best source of intelligence about those dastardly terrorists on the entire planet. Then they dumped his body in the ocean before telling anyone about it. Then a couple dozen of that team's members died in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan. This is the story of 9/11, brought to you by the media which told you the hard truths about
his head could be seen to move violently forward.
And
They took the babies out of the incubators.
And
mobile production facilities.
And
the rescue of Jessica Lynch.
If you have any questions about this story, you are a batshit paranoid tinfoil dog-abusing baby hater and will be reviled by everyone. If you love your country and or freedom, happiness, rainbows, rock and roll, puppy dogs, apple pie, and your grandma, you will never ever express doubts about any part of this story to anyone. Ever. This has been a public service announcement by the Friends of the FBI, CIA, NSA, DIA, SEC, MSM, White House, NIST, and the 9/11 Commission. Because ignorance is
Where can you get that video? Whenever, this is something I've learned through painful experience, if you are able to find this video somewhere, get it, download it onto your computer immediately, like that second, because it will disappear, it'll be gone, and you won't find it again. Yeah, you can.
You can download it from,
Yeah.
what's the title of the video?
The title of the video is 911, A Conspiracy Theory. Yeah, there it is. 911, A Conspiracy Theory.
Well, you can take your own video with your own camera of the YouTubes to save it on your own camera.
You could.
What was that about? They took a baby out of the incubator.
Oh, that was some fake news information. There was a whole theater set up around because the cabal wanted us to go to war with Iraq. So they created this whole theater about having kids and people testify that that Saddam Hussein's troops had come into hospitals and they took babies out of the incubators and smashed them because they're so cruel and evil, and that's why America needs to go to war with Iraq and kill Saddam Hussein.
Yes. That was the Emir of Kuwait's daughter.
Oh, the Emir of Kuwait's daughter. Did you know her?
No, I didn't know her. I've seen films on her a lot before.
Okay.
That was the Emir of Kuwait's daughter.
Wow. So she was royalty, so she had to be telling the truth. So that was one of the things that they used to get us to go to war with Iraq.
So what are you saying then? We took our own buildings now?
Yes.
No, I'm not saying that. They just said that. But I'm not saying that, no.
It's just common sense, to be honest with you. That's the way Americans have done it, set everybody else up to look like they're the bad guys. That's just Americans.
And that's her talking, not me. Let me put the microphone down.
Also,
while she talks.
It's interesting, George Bush was in a classroom in Florida, and the Secret Service guy whispered something, it's like one plane hit, the World Trade Center. And it was like, no big. Well, when the second one hit, finally he got up and did a speech. But the first one, a plane hits the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. And you're still like not phased. And you're still reading, the nursery rhyme to the little boys and girls. Come on.
Well, it could be, it could have been, like initially, I think we thought, one of these planes grazed, because that is possible, right? Like a little plane, like that, that happened again, I think, in New York or someplace. And it wasn't
The Empire
exactly
State
that.
Building back in the
No, it wasn't
40s,
that.
there was a plane that hit the
It
building.
was after the World Trade Center, someplace else in the country, one of these planes, it wouldn't be a direct hit, it was a graze, and I think that's what people had originally thought, and the pilot lost control and grazed the building.
Right.
That's different, right?
I heard one of the reporters, I forgot her name, on NBC, not Cokie Roberts, but I heard one of them, when the second plane hit, she started saying, I'm starting to think this is not an accident. What a moron.
So the first one, it would be different if it was grazed, and the building wouldn't come down.
Incredible. Yes, was there somebody else? Anybody else? Yes.
Who has what to gain if we went to war with Iraq?
There were many levels. There were many levels of purpose to that. They wanted us to go to Iraq because they wanted, first of all, war profiteering, okay? That's always one of the major things. The cabal always wants us to be in these endless wars because it helps their industrial complex, the war machine of their country and several other countries. Also, there was some, the cabal wanted to get their hands on some, and some of you will know about this, on some devices that were supposedly alien tech devices that were in the Iraqi museum, National Museum, and also gold. There were tons of gold right around the Iraqi National Museum, and they sent US soldiers to retrieve both. There were these Babylonian devices that were in that museum that Saddam didn't know how to use them. And apparently the cabal did know how to use them. And stargates and things, and not just stargates, but other devices too, that did other things. And Saddam just put them in a Babylonian museum, and he didn't know what to do with them. But the cabal wanted those devices, so they sent US soldiers to empty out the Iraqi National Museum and get all those devices. And also they got the gold. They got tons and tons and tons of gold.
These were not of the earth, these devices? These were...
I don't believe they were, or they could have been of the earth, but through gateways. That's ancient civilizations, exactly, which is kind of equivalent to alien tech. So
the other question was Saddam King, or was a clone or a lookalike thing?
Yeah, because he could have made a deal to hand this stuff over, but. Yes, sir.
The big one was Dick Cheney's group. They made billions just ripping off our own government.
Yeah, Halliburton made huge money.
Made huge money off of that war.
Absolutely. So there's always many levels. It's not just, so, everybody's right when they know one reason that we went to war, but there's usually a lot more reasons as well.
You know what the main one is? United Nations #1 issue. Years ago when I took a tour around there.
I'm putting my mic down just in case what she said.
Okay. Oh no, I want to be recorded. That's okay.
I'm sure you are being.
Yeah, no,
that's
where's
my word.
Picture? Hello. They've been to my front door. I sent out a piece.
I think they've been inside your
front door. Doesn't matter.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, but world overpopulation. So they're projecting into the future. How will humans live with this many people on the planet? So they want war to cut down the population. They want AIDS, and they set that up in Africa, and the monkeys and the lab. They scratch the people. So they got, and the homosexuals were considered, not suitable, so let's get rid of them in San Francisco. It's all, you know, how to lower the world population and get rid of the people that judge other people don't have the right to live.
That's a good point.
I know it's true. Yeah. I know it's true.
That's one of the agenda items. One of the things I go through here is I'm going to show a video on the next slide. One of the big problems that I think it's been solved now is how do we tell the globalist traitors in our midst? It's very difficult because, like serial killers, they look just like you and me, look like anybody else. So how do you tell? Well, in ancient times, there used to usually be one global world leader, like Alexander the Great or Napoleon, and the people who would be working with those dictators, they would have coins in their pockets that had the face of Napoleon on a coin. And that's how you could tell. You'd go through their things and you would show what do they have in their pockets. And they would have a coin that had Napoleon's face on it. And that's how you could tell who the traitors were in your midst. So this next clip that I'm doing is from a movie that shows the Senate of Sparta and senators who are actually working with Xerxes and how they expose him.
A bribe of the flesh, gentlemen, while our husband promotes anarchy and war. Words escape even most cunning tongue. My little whore queen. What queen-like behavior. Remove her from this chamber before she infects us further with her inglorious and shabby self.
This will not be over quickly. You will not enjoy this. I am not your queen.
That's the face of Xerxes, the Persian world emperor. It was in his purse. Traitor.
Who is that?
That's this is Sparta.
This is Sparta?
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, 300.
Oh, that was Sparta 300? Yeah, I don't remember that scene.
Exactly, because they don't want me to. The globalist terror agenda against the Western world. This is the globalist coin that we need to look for. Like the young lady just said, depopulation is one of their #1 agenda. That's the primary #1 agenda. That's wrapped up with legal, widespread, politicized abortion, endless wars, GMO foods, big pharma. Second item, civilian disarmament. Take your guns away, take your ability to defend your life away. The #3, control of economies, debt slavery model through the central banks. #4, elimination of borders, the nation state and all border defenses, European Union, assault on our borders by refugee movements. These are top agenda items that will never go away because the globalists are multi-generational. They have done this for thousands of years and they know what they're doing.
Well, they're gonna be in for a surprise.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. And #5, control by globalist elites directly over national citizens. Global warming, climate change agenda, direct control by the elites over us. Also global taxation and strict control of all corporate media. And on agenda #5, I have an example to show you that shows the level of control over the media that the cabal exercises. I call them epic, the elite powers in control, but people can call them by different names. And it's a pretty shocking example because it shows something that was in the news that most of you guys don't know about. This is a question of portals, not physical aliens. And so with that in mind, this has been going on all of last year. And yet, for most of you, this will be the first time you're hearing about it. This is information control by the cabal.
Video out of New York. No, this is not a scene from an upcoming Independence Day movie or an actual alien invasion. New York police say it's a transformer explosion at a power plant in Queens, lighting up the New York City skyline in a brilliant blue. No one was hurt in the explosion. The explosion caused some power outages, including LaGuardia Airport, but they didn't last very long. The New York Fire Department determined it was caused by equipment malfunction.
Now, the first thing that I want to draw attention to is the video captured of what happened. Meanwhile, they splice in video that you see here of some kind of event supposedly taken during the same thing. They combine those images together to make it seem like, oh, regular people got video of the close-up transformer explosion. But that is how deceptive and sneaky they really are. This is what a real transformer explosion looks like. This video was captured last year in New Brunswick. As you can see, it doesn't go on for as long as this event did, and it doesn't light up the entire sky with a bright bluish green. It is a warm yellowish glow, and it is a local light that definitely does not light up the entire sky, and it extinguishes very quickly.
This has been going on all of last year. We have had, and it's the only way I can say it, we've had alien portals that have been opening up over all the major cities across the United States. These portals have been, and they just appear in the sky. They're usually bluish green, and they appear to be some sort of portals that open up, and UFOs have been coming out, pouring out of these portals and coming into the major cities.
Beam me up.
Yeah, right?
These actual aliens?
I don't know. I just told you what we've seen. Actual UFOs coming out of these portals that light up lightish bluish green. But that's not the end of the story. We get a lot of UFOs that pour out of these things, and they've been over major cities. And it happened in New York City on this day. But then what happens is, apparently somebody doesn't want us to know what these things are, because does anybody know what DEWs are? DEWs, directed energy weapons. There are apparently these, in the middle of this happening, and a lot of times this is at 3 in the morning, some rays suddenly come out of the sky and start blowing things up on the ground, like gas stations or electrical transformers.
Yes, sir.
Isn't that what's causing the wildfires in California and down in the Amazon?
The DEWs, yes. Yeah, yeah. A wildfire cannot start naturally in 10 different places at the same time, simultaneously, exactly. That cannot happen. A wildfire can start in one place if it's naturally occurring. That's it. But that's not what's happening here. These are DEWs, directed energy weapons, satellite-based weapons that belong to the cabal, not to us.
And then, so they're trying to distract us from this.
Exactly.
I think you're brainwashed about cabal. I'd say it's the United States. We have the technology. Not
Do we though?
Oh yeah, we got
Really?
better. Don't plant a seed that it's the other guy. Don't do that.
Why not?
Okay.
Why
The
not?
cabal is
Not fair.
The
That's
cabal
not
is
fair.
international.
Well, how do you know?
Well, he doesn't know either, so why
Well,
should
that's
you
your
say?
opinion then as well.
You can have your opinion.
That's right. That's right. Exactly
You can
right.
announce it unless you know.
Yeah. Well, then I have to announce my stuff, though.
So quickly. Plus, I also want to know, what is seen flying out of this bright area in the sky?
This is the same
Could it
event
be
in New York City.
that perhaps we are
different
being
angle.
visited by extraterrestrials?
Did you see that?
Could it be that perhaps we are being visited by another dimension? Or could it be that these are experiments being made right in front of our eyes? What
And you
if
see the shadow in the back?
this is a government experiment that was out of control? The quickest thing to say is, hey, it was an electrical fire. Well, last time I checked, this is what an electrical fire looks like. It's always red and black from the smoke. I've never once seen
Did anybody hear about this event when it
blue
happened?
Sky due to an electrical fire.
Just
So
a
what is
couple.
happening here? It's very scary, but I think that we finally have made contact. It is here.
You'll see the
ladies and gentlemen.
UFO come out of the side there.
Proof
See it? Yeah.
is here. It's happened right in front of our eyes and we haven't even noticed. We have not even noticed. Now what should we be doing? I want to be prepared in every way possible. We don't know exactly what's
Slow
going to
motion.
happen from this moment on. 2019 is going to be a very interesting year. I want to play this over and over again, slower, so that you can see what I see. I'm going to slow it down to the speed of maybe half or 1/4 of the regular speed. And you can clearly see that something has flown out of this area in the sky. It almost looks as if something actually opened, some type of portal. As you can see there, you can actually notice something, actually a bright light. And then from that light comes this vessel. So many questions can be asked from here on. Like, what is in the vessel? Could this be connected to time travel? That's another theory.
Now,
that
most
I have,
UFOs are
that I
invisible.
believe
They're not
is
visible
very
within our
possible.
span of light.
Could it
our
be
band
that
of
we
light.
are seeing ourselves
So
from the future?
when you see one
Or could it be
UFO
that this is
visible,
also
it's usually an
maybe
accident
an
or something's gone
interdimensional
wrong.
portal
And it probably
that
means
has opened? And if
there's
so,
dozens more
what other
that you
creatures
can't
or what
see
other
as well.
dangers, what other things or beings could travel through that portal? Should we be worried? The answer is yes. You should be. You've seen it in front of your eyes. You guys.
And this one happened in Kenner, Louisiana, right around the same time, and it was the exact same event, except in this one you can see the doers a little more clearly. And people are scared on the ground. You see this thing coming down and trying to blow up the gas station. And in this one, the person recording is so fixed on the rays coming down that he doesn't even show the portal. But it's up there. There's a portal in the middle of the sky, bluish green, that's ejecting UFOs. That's true. Yep. Yep. Distraction.
That's crazy.
Distraction. That's called lens flare, right? Yeah, lens flare. Yeah. So is that what this is? Well, you have to decide for yourself.
We thought we were late to the party.
And this happened in Maracaibo, Venezuela.
Sigue explotando todo, acaba de explotar toda la calle. Esto es una cosa, mire. Este es el breguero eléctrico.
It's Kenner again. I know. There's limits to lens flare. Yeah, exactly.
Overnight, the New York City sky lit up in a supernatural shade of blue.
Oh my God.
What is that? That looks gnarly.
Look at the sky. Well, that doesn't look good.
India. Sao Paulo, Brazil. And the distraction works because you notice all these people filming forgot about the portal in the sky because they're so fixed on what's happening on the ground. Mexico City, Mexico.
It's happening.
Crossville, Tennessee. She shows the portal here. And
The portals then on the other, for all the other places besides New York?
Say again?
Are there portal images somewhere of the other places besides New York?
I'm sure there's images, like still photography, you mean?
No, I mean video, like everything kind of.
This is it. This is the video that's available because, as you know, as I said before, these things are always taken down as soon as they're posted. So if you don't grab them right away, you're not even going to have this. So like right now, for instance, if you go out and try to find these videos that I posted, you have a very, very hard time.
So why doesn't somebody else put a comparable YouTube up so they can post everything? That's what we need. We need a truth.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, I keep on moving to another, I forget what it is though.
How do I say it?
What is it?
So I don't say it wrong.
Bucket.
Phuket.
I don't know.
She lived there. She says it's Phuket. Phuket. Phuket.
So this looks like a volcano cloud, but there's no volcano there, right? It just appeared, and it's got lightning going through it, and yeah, it was April 25th, and there's UFOs coming out of that cloud too, because there's other video, and you got to slow it down, and there's UFOs coming out of that cloud, and lightning at the same time. It's extraordinary. Extraordinary. But it's the red cloud that people were just fascinated by. They were like, what's the reason for this thing? Because like I said, it's not a volcano. Yeah. This is all portals, folks. It's all portals. And I offer this, like I said, not for the proof of what it is. I'm offering this to show information control by the cabal, that you guys are the most awakened people probably in every community, and most of you didn't hear a thing about any of this. Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible, and it just shows how controlled our information is. It's amazing. Sometimes they did report this on local news for like 5 seconds. That's it. And then they took it down and you never saw it again. So, and this is happening over all the major cities. These are not happening in rural areas. It's happening over populated major cities. And yet, here we are, we haven't heard about it.
Because Americans only report American news. They don't report international news.
Yeah.
But the football game, they'll have 20 different perspectives on the tackle.
Right, right, exactly. 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 Yeah. But if Kim Kardashian has a bowel movement, everybody knows what it looks like, what shape it is, and what angle it came out at. Yes, and how many diamonds were in it. You see? So that's what I'm talking about when I say the information control by the cabal. This is a living example of it that I'm showing you here. As we get closer to real disclosure, also there's been a new phenomenon called partial disclosure, controlled disclosure, which is government, intel agency, mainstream media disclosure, whenever you see CNN or Fox News saying, oh, here's a UFO event, and it appears to be real, and you see that, that's what I'm talking about. Partial disclosure, controlled disclosure, government intel disclosure. Like all of these guys you see in this picture, all of these guys are former CIA officials and Department of Defense officials, okay? Guys who've dedicated their entire lives to deceiving the public, every one of them. And yet there they are on stage saying that, oh, we retired from our agencies yesterday, and today we're gonna tell the truth to all of you guys. That is partial disclosure. That is controlled disclosure. Yeah. Oh, I gotta show this. We did this for a show, and there's one guy in here who says, could it be a fake? Yes, let's say it's a fake.
Warning, the following content may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. November 2004, off the coast of San Diego. A training exercise has begun. The USS Nimitz supercarrier, the largest aircraft carrier in the world, designed for one purpose: to infiltrate and annihilate enemy forces.
The Nimitz is one of the largest ships we have in the US Navy. It's so big, it has enough firepower to basically take over the entire country. Add to that the Nimitz is always accompanied by smaller ships of all shapes and sizes. You're talking about a flotilla.
Housing over 6,000 soldiers, the Nimitz can launch one of its 90 deadly warbirds every 20 seconds. This is the US Navy at its most extreme. No one and no thing would dare cross its path. Until November 14th. A blip appears on the radar. An unknown object crosses the screen, pushing speeds at over 3,000 miles per hour. Radar operators assume it's a technical malfunction. But then another object appears, and another, and another. The Nimitz goes into high alert. Not only are these foreign objects appearing near a Navy aircraft carrier, but they're also invading United States airspace. 2 F-18 fighters are deployed, led by Top Gun Navy pilot Commander David Fravor. With over 16 years flight experience and over 3,500 flight hours, Fravor had more qualifications than any other pilot in the United States at the time.
So we were running training exercises before our deployment to Iraq when we got the call about these foreign objects. So I ordered my guys to suit up and go check it out. But we never could have expected what we were about to see.
Flying high above the ocean surface, the F-18s intercept the location of contact, 180 miles west of the San Diego coastline. When Commander Fravor reaches the contact point, he looks out of his cockpit window and is astonished at what he sees below. A craft hovers above the ocean surface, floating in midair. It has no exhaust, no wings or rotors, and no apparent means of mechanical lift. Fravor described the craft as an elongated egg or tic-tac shaped craft, unlike anything in the U.S. Armada.
See, the craft didn't have any flight surfaces on it. There was no wings, no tail, no jet engine. It was just solid and white. And it hovered like a helicopter, except there was no rotor wash on the surface of the water.
And if the presence of the craft wasn't strange enough, what happens next defies all known physical laws. The craft began moving at instantaneous speeds, starting and stopping without any acceleration or deceleration. Commander Fravor said it looked like a ping pong ball scanning across the water, and that the G-forces of such maneuvers should have been enough to destroy the craft itself, or at least instantly kill any human occupants inside.
When we're dealing with advanced technology, we're in the realm of the unknown. We don't actually know what it is that's animating the craft. We don't know how it's moving. It's beyond the realm of our physics and our understanding of how physics work. Therefore, when we're thinking about things like G-force, to us, it makes sense that it doesn't make sense. But when we traverse into that unknown territory, we have to start asking more questions about what we think we know.
At this point, all I could think about was, I want to get a better look at this thing.
Fravor pilots within a half mile of the craft and chases it throughout the sky. And once he locked on, his heat-activated camera picked up this extraordinary footage.
There's a whole fleet of them. What's on the ASA?
Commander Fravor and his co-pilot converse over their private communication line.
They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. My gosh.
The seasoned pilots are completely baffled by the craft's speed, lack of heat exhaust, and impossible maneuverability. Then, something amazing happens. The craft begins rotating on its side.
It's rotating.
The pilots are shocked. It becomes clear to these professional pilots that what they're witnessing is not of this world.
I've never seen anything move like that. I mean, it had no exhaust. Every aircraft has exhaust. Even drones have contrails that you can see on the FLIR feed. There was nothing coming out of this to make it move. I've seen every aircraft on Earth. And this thing was not from Earth.
You can believe that there's other life out there, and you can believe that it's coming here to visit, but it's much different than when you actually are staring at it, because your entire worldview is shattered. This thing shows up out of nowhere. That's not part of your current reality. You can't deny it. It is there.
When the footage was released in 2017 by the Pentagon, the military classified the object as an AAV, an anomalous aerial vehicle, the new military term for UFO. But this wasn't the first sighting. Over the following 2-week period, the Nimitz continued to spot hundreds of craft, and new footage kept rolling in.
Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at that, man. Look at it fly.
Why is it that even people in our military who are fighter pilots with 17 years experience, they don't know what advanced technology is being used?
Within days, internet commenters suggested the video might be the work of clever CGI artists or an elaborate hoax. But the nature of the footage and its release suggests otherwise.
Let's say, could it be a fake? Let's say yes. Okay, it's a fake. If it is something like CGI, then you have to consider that means that every single pilot involved is in on the fake. The people on the Nimitz are also in on the fake. People at the Pentagon who authorized this to be released are in on the fake. Either way, this is a monumental story because you're talking about either this is aliens visiting us with tech that we can't imagine, or this is a fake from the government that somehow has some extraordinary agenda going forward to make us believe in alien life.
To this day, the Pentagon has no explanation for the event, and the military's executive report assesses that the anomalous aerial vehicle was no known aircraft or air vehicle currently in the inventory of the United States or any foreign nation.
This is an extraordinary event, and taken in context with the eyewitness testimony of the pilot flying the jet chasing this thing, and the radar data from the ship itself tracking this thing, you've got not only an image, but radar data, and the pilot giving his personal testimony. You've got 3 different triangulations that this is something not from Earth.
Could the Tic Tac craft be evidence of extraterrestrial contact with our own military? Are the purposes of its occupants peaceful, or are they possibly a threat to national or even global security? Perhaps an explanation can be found from more extraordinary footage captured by everyday civilians recording UFO contact on a commercial airline.
that was something that I still think could possibly, that was something that I think still, to this day, I believe could possibly have been a fake. I don't know how they did it, but I still do believe, I now believe that it very possibly was a fake. Even though it was real to the pilots, it was real on the ground. For what purpose? That's a good question. For the purpose of control, the purpose of partial disclosure is always to get us hinked up, to get us scared of alien invasion and of aliens in general. You know the acronyms that they come up with, AAV? Okay, they now changed that from AAV, anomalous aerial vehicle, to AAT, like Tom, anomalous aerial threat. Okay? As a matter of fact, I saw a couple of politicians using those acronyms when they first started this campaign, this partial disclosure campaign. And it was Hillary Clinton, who went on an interview with Charlie Rose and said the words AAT, anomalous aerial threat. Okay? And then shortly after that, John Podesta, her campaign manager, went on interviews and used the same exact language. And then one of their friends, Harry Reid, former senator from Nevada, one of the most corrupt characters who ever lived, also came forward and said anomalous aerial threat. So that is the purpose. That is the purpose, to get us, because Wernher von Braun, the great futurist who was in charge of NASA, said that the final great fake war is going to be a fake alien invasion. So that's what we have to watch out for, and that's what I think this campaign is for.
It all started because of, who was it, H.G. Wells and his radio, his
War of the Worlds. Yeah, that was a big one. That was a big one.
We turned it on and panic, and then the government thought everybody's going to always panic.
And this last thing I'm going to show you guys is a movie clip from a movie that came out in 1987, a long time ago. And the strange thing is, this is available for free everywhere. Nobody takes it down. It's a movie called Escape from Sobibor. And it affected me very deeply when it came out. I never knew why, but now I realize why. It's because everything that happened in this clip symbolizes us escaping out of the paradigm, the fake paradigm. Even the little kids at the beginning of the clip that are killed, I see so much of us in this clip, like Seth Rich, Aaron Swartz, reporter Michael Hastings, all the souls lost at New York City 911, the Clinton body count, the two separate body counts, the Cabal body count, Andrew Breitbart, all the people that we've lost. And here's the quote from the movie, God is with you, now let nothing stop you.
Stop! Stop!
Rutger Hauer.
We'll never make it to the front gate now. Listen to me. Our day has come. Most of the SS are dead. It's everyone for himself now. Those of you who survive, bear witness. Let the world know what has happened here. God is with you. Now let nothing stop you.
there's your friends and family that won't listen, won't awaken.
Come on, Leah! Get up! Get up!
No matter what you do, they won't wake up.
Come on, we must go! Come on! Cover me!
There's George Soros and Hillary Clinton.
Take Moses with you, and I'll find you in the forest. Go.
It was August 14th, 1943. 600 escaped. Only 300 survived. Less than half the number. But it was the only time in history an entire prison camp escaped from the Nazis or from anyone. This has never happened at any other time in human history since Spartacus in Rome, when Spartacus liberated an entire prison camp in Rome. No. Well, they set it up. The prisoners set it up. But the Nazis, they were all killed by their own people. The commander who survived at the camp, they killed him for his failure. They finally escaped, and they ran right into a minefield. And yet, not one of them turned back. No one turned back. They kept going. The fences were supposed to be down already at the beginning, but those young boys were the ones who were supposed to do it, and they get killed right at the beginning.
Get up, Samuel! We're almost at the woods! Get up!
There's George Soros. August 14th, 1943, the last day of the Sobibor prison camp. 300 out of 600 survived and escaped. And those 300 almost all of them became famous Nazi hunters. They went all over the world after the war. They went to Argentina, Brazil. They went everywhere in the world that Nazis were hiding, and they helped the prosecution of those guys. It's an extraordinary story. And they all have reunions at Sobibor, Poland, every year, August 14th, since 1943. There's a statue that's there commemorating Sobibor, and it's the only statue of its kind in the world. It's a statue of, instead of being of a soldier or some proud general, it's a statue of a Polish woman with a babushka on her head being shot from behind and falling to the ground. It's very emotional stuff. And
Hitler was carried, escaped to Brazil, or?
That's right. We're finding out that it's very possible that occurred. But like I said, yeah, and like I said, 300 people can change the course of the world. It's incredible. Yes, sir?
To the point, you're bringing it home to what we were seeing before, that you're saying that we can change things in spite of what's up against us.
Absolutely. I see, and you know what's funny is this is the only clip that I show that's available everywhere. You can get this movie is available for free. Everyone should see Escape from Sobibor. There's been many versions, but this is the best one, even though it's an older one. But it's allowed, you can get it for free on YouTube. It's available free everywhere. And the reason is because no one's connected it yet to us today, and the struggle that we're doing against the globalists and what they're doing. But if that connection becomes very popular, then this will be taken down also, just like all the other clips that, and you'll never be able to find it again. I mean the elite powers in control, the ancient bloodlines who have dominated this earth since the very beginning of time. 13 family bloodlines, they they change names every few generations, but they're still the same 13 bloodlines that are out there. Some people call them the Illuminati. Some people call them, I call them the elite powers in control. And other people call them the cabal, the United States section of those guys is called the deep state. The deep state, the political American arm of those guys. So that's who I'm talking about when I talk about that.
I have a friend who subscribes to a lot of these things. Louder, please.
A little bit louder. You have a friend who subscribes.
To a lot of these things. And
Okay.
Then, sometimes I think, but one of the things she has brought up, and I hope this isn't too good. No, I barely want to say it, is chemtrails.
Chemtrails, okay.
Yeah,
What about
because I thought at first she was crazy.
Yeah.
But except I said, well, they're planes. What?
Yeah. Chemtrails. It's not. I've heard that chemtrails have now been eliminated by the alliance, by the.
Yeah, you're not seeing them as much.
Right.
It's like all over
Right,
the sky.
and that's very recent. I heard just recently, like about a month ago. I don't know if you guys have heard the same. So that chemtrails are one less thing we have to be concerned about now. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
And I think it's true. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I still see them around a lot, but from what I understand, they've changed the contents of them. They're ionizing the sky of some kind.
Well, is that good? Ionizing the sky?
From what I can gather, there's a book out called Living Under an Ionized Sky. It's by Ivana Freeland or something. And from what I understand, it's a part of a HARP project.
Yeah, weather control.
Weather control.
Here's the thing, though. Well, the feeling was that there were like chemicals. They were spraying us with chemicals, and I thought, well, the people that are spraying are living here too. Do you know what I mean? Why would we forget that?
Are they though?
Yeah.
How do we know that they're living here?
I mean, even water, they say that they're giving it so the men stop being so productive and so fertile and can stop. Oh yeah, water contaminated.
Me too?
Yeah.
I'm
fertile.
I can get the job done, believe me.
Yes. Years ago, I went to a neutral UFO network meeting with MUFON, and Linda Wright Howe was one of the guests, and one of the people in the audience asked her, have you ever been hassled or threatened because you keep doing this all the time? And her answer was, I can't talk about that. Wow. What about you?
Yeah.
Have you ever had any flow back?
Well,
it wasn't what you're doing here and in other places.
I'm sure I have, but I don't, for the most part, I don't notice threats and harassment. It's just like it doesn't really register with me very much at all. So I'm sure that I have received, and not only threats, but there's always, the cabal always sends these dangle operations where they will send somebody suspicious to be your friend and to tell you, hey, I can get you on CNN, and I can get you all this, and I can get you this. And they don't know that among us, if we hear somebody is connected to CNN, right away we know that's suspicious, so that's like a red flag right there. So it's pretty easy to ferret these guys out. So yeah, I'm sure I've had threats and harassment, but it barely registers with me. So I don't notice.
Not following you and is not sitting right here in this audience.
They could be. They very well could be. But it doesn't bother me much. Let me put it that way. Yes.
I came in a few minutes late, so I don't know if you mentioned this, but
Would you like us to get back to the beginning and do it again? I'll do it.
No, you work for the FBI, so related to this, what is the disclosure thing for you? Like, did you have to wait a certain amount of time before you could start to come publicly?
No, the FBI doesn't really care what I talk about or disclose, as long as I label it paranormal. And right, because government people, they just can't enter, the data doesn't enter to them that something supernatural, paranormal, outside the paradigm could be real. So they're just like, oh, it's fine, whatever he wants to talk about, we don't care.
In America, you can say whatever you want so long as you don't have a threat in there. You can say, I hate your fucking ass. but you cannot say, I'm gonna get you. I'm thinking about taking you out. If you say anything to that, they will arrest you and throw you into jail.
I can see you've had experiences making threats. Be careful of her. Yes?
What do you think the reasons are for the UFOs coming through all those flares that you're showing?
Oh, the reasons are because they want to be with us. They need
They're helping us.
They need connection with us. They require that. They need it, and they are making those connections all over the world all the time.
As themselves, as an ET, or in human?
I think
form?
both. I think they are in human form also, and I think they are in their own form. But they're also extra dimensional, so that they don't have a permanent form, as far as I can see. So they can assume, let's say, a reptilian form if they want to scare you. Or they can assume an angelic form if they want to help you.
Are they mainly positive?
I think they're both.
Yeah. Okay.
I think they're both. There's negative entities that are anti-life, anti-human, and there's good entities that are positive and good and help you and want to just uplift us and want to cure us and want to do good things for us.
And the main reason is if Earthlings get into a World War III and there's nuclear bombs and everything, and we die as a planet, even though people can escape on space stations, they won't be able to return like they think they can. And they're going to be out there starving to death.
One-way ticket.
But it'll throw off the whole dynamics of the universe. Our one little planet dead, it's like a cancer. It'll just grow, and everybody else, they're trying to protect
So,
us
final
from
questions?
killing ourselves.
Yes, young man.
That's
You
what they're
haven't
doing.
mentioned one of my favorite shows, the X-Files show. And what's...
I like Fringe better. Don't you like Fringe?
Did they actually contact FBI for their scripts, or and your connection to it?
Yeah, they called me the X-Man because in the 90s we had this guy Chris Carter who got some of my case files, not case files. It's an OTB book. It's a book where we take notes of cases that can't go into FBI files. It's called Off the Books. It's my sketchbook of things where it couldn't go into FBI files, and he got a hold of my my OTB book, and he used that for the first season of the X-Files, and he put some stories in there. My bosses recognized that. They called up Chris Carter. They made some threats to Chris Carter, which he took very seriously. And we were able to work it out, though, because they weren't willing to divulge what cases were involved and details of those cases in order for Chris Carter to stop doing what he was doing. So they just allowed them to go ahead and do what he had to do. And we just kind of left it like that. And that's how the X-Files started many years ago. In 1993, the same year as the first World Trade Center action, which was the first time they tried to blow it up back in. No, I have not met them yet. I know some of the actors on there, but they're the minor guys, the guys who went and did the Lone Gunmen, which is a whole nother conspiracy on its own. So, all right, we're finishing. Yes, young lady.
Get the name Indigo for the children.
The name. Maybe I gave it to them. I'm not sure, but there were so many of us involved in those things. We just started calling them the Indigo Kids of 9/11, and I'm not sure who came up with it originally.
Somebody said they saw that there was an indigo kind of glow in your aura or something.
Indigo glow in their aura, and that may be why because indigo is a color. Is that why? What's the color? What color is it? Blue. All right, good. Now I learned stuff today. Excellent. Oh, very dark blue. All right. Excellent. Purple. All right, now we have disagreement. It's like Parliament in here. Okay. So, any last questions? I think we're done, guys. That's all I got for you. Thanks. Thanks for watching these presentations. This is John DeSouza signing off. For more information, go to johntamabooks.com for more things that can help you in your everyday life. Important things that'll blow your mind.